everyone, and welcome. I would now like to call the January 23rd, 2024 Longmont City Council regular session to order. The live stream of this meeting can be viewed at the city's YouTube channel or at longmontspublicmedia.org/watch or on Comcast channels 8 or 880. Can we have the roll call, please, Don?
Absolutely. Mayor Peck.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo Faring.
Here.
Council members Martin.
Here.
McCoy.
Present.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Yarbrough.
Here.
Christ.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's stand for the roll call. For the pledge.
I know what you meant.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion for the January 9th regular session minutes?
I move the January 9th, 2024 regular session minutes as presented.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Martin. Do we have any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, let's vote. And that carries unanimously. As a reminder to the public, the rules for providing public comment are as follows. Each speaker must give their name and address and is limited to 3 minutes. Only Longmont residents and employees of the city of Longmont may speak during first call, public invited to be heard, and you must sign up on the list prior to the start of the meeting. Persons wishing to speak on a specific second reading or public hearing item are asked to add their name to the speaker list for the specific item prior to the start of the meeting. And anyone can speak, and no sign-up is required to speak during final call, public invited to be heard. I am wondering, do we have any agenda revisions or submissions of documents and motions to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas? Don, do we have any revisions?
No revisions, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to add for a future agenda a discussion about city council salary increase.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Yarbrough to have an agenda revision for a discussion on salary increase for council, seconded by Councilor Rodriguez. All those in favor? Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, let's vote. That passes unanimous. No, I'm sorry, that passes 6-1 with Councilor Christ in opposition. We're now at city manager's report.
No report, Mayor, Council.
We have a proclamation to read tonight, and it is a proclamation designating January the 1st through the 31st, 2024, as National Radon Action Month in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas radon is an invisible, colorless, odorless, radioactive gas that threatens the health of our residents and their families, and radon is a leading environmental cause of cancer mortality in the U.S., and it's the 8th leading cause of cancer mortality overall. And whereas the Colorado Rocky Mountain region has been ranked Zone 1, an area with the highest radon potential possible by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and Colorado residential radon data has shown 50% of Colorado homes tested as being at or above the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency radon action level of 4.0 PCI. I'm going to try to pronounce this, picocuries per liter of air. And whereas any home in Longmont, Colorado may have elevated levels of radon, and supporting recommended radon practices and policies to reduce radon exposure is important to protect our community's health and welfare. And whereas testing for radon is simple and inexpensive, and identified radon problems can be fixed. And whereas Boulder County Public Health, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the American Lung Association are supporting efforts to encourage Americans to test their homes for radon, have elevated levels of radon reduced, and have new homes built with radon-resistant features. Now therefore, I, Joan Peck, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim January 1st through the 31st, 2024, as National Radon Action Month in Longmont, Colorado, and I encourage all residents to check their homes for radon. Do we have someone here to come on up? This is Patty Dooley Strapelli. Can you turn on the microphone, please? I think it's in the upper left-hand corner. Harold, can you help her turn that on?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I appreciate you reading the proclamation and taking the time again this year to proclaim January as National Radon Action Month. It's a great time to remind folks how easy it is to test for this environmental hazard, and also it's one that's easy to fix. And there are many ways to get test kits. One easy way is on the CDPHE's website right now for free radon test kits at coloradoradon.info. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you for letting us know where we can get the tests. That's very important. Do counselors have any questions? Seeing none, would you like a picture of us with giving you this proclamation?
If you'd like,
It's up to you.
I can pass.
Okay. Well, come on up and get the
Okay,
proclamation.
thank you.
So we're now at first call public invited to be heard. I was just handed the sign-up sheet, and it looks like there is no one on the sign-up sheet. So I will close public, first call public invited to be heard. Since we don't have any public invited to be heard, we are now at the reading of the first ordinances. Dawn, would you mind reading the ordinances into the record?
Absolutely, Mayor. Second reading and public hearing for the ordinances introduced on this consent agenda tonight will be held on February 13th, 2024. Item 9A are ordinances approving amendments to City of Longmont retirement plans. There are 5 of them. Ordinance 2024-08, a bill for an ordinance amending Section 3.04.885 of the Longmont Municipal Code, adopting an amended and restated City of Longmont General Employees Retirement Plan. Ordinance 2024-09, a bill for an ordinance amending Section 3.04.885 of the Longmont Municipal Code, adopting an amendment to the Money Accumulation Pension Plan for employees of the City of Longmont. Ordinance 2024-10, a bill for an ordinance amending Section 3.04.885 of the Longmont Municipal Code, adopting amendments to the City of Longmont Old Hire Police Pension Plan and Old Hire Fire Pension Plan. Ordinance 2024-11, a bill for an ordinance amending Section 3.04.885 of the Longmont Municipal Code, adopting an amendment to the City of Longmont Police Pension Plan and Trust Agreement. And ordinance 2024-12, a bill for an ordinance amending Section 3.04.885 of the Longmont Municipal Code, adopting an amendment to the City of Longmont Fire Employees Pension Plan and Trust Agreement. Item 9B is ordinance 2024-13, a bill for an ordinance authorizing a farmland lease agreement between the City of Longmont and Gary Bogot at 12748 Weld County Road 1. 9C is ordinance 2024-14, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the real property known as Vance Brand Municipal Airport Hangar Parcel H34C to LK Holding Company LLC. 9D is resolution 2024-07, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Longmont Housing Authority for support and services. And 9E is resolution 2024-08, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Longmont and Boulder County Board of Commissioners for a harm reduction outreach specialist for the LEAD program.
Thank you, Don. Are there any counselors that would like to pull one of these agenda items or ordinances? Seeing no one, can I have a motion? Counselor Martin?
Yes, I move the consent agenda for adoption.
Thank you. That was moved by Counselor Martin, seconded by Counselor Rodriguez. Let's vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We are now we're going to have a presentation on the ordinance on the second reading and public hearings. The first one is a bill for an ordinance repealing and reenacting Chapter 2.56 of the Longmont Municipal Code on the Historic Preservation Commission and amending Chapter 2.97, Section 2.97.010, When I see Glenn Van Nimwegen.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I wasn't here at first reading, but I did watch the meeting, and there were a number of questions that came up. So if you'd like, I have a very short presentation
Please,
to
yes.
address those issues. Just give me 1 minute.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay, thank you, Mayor. So these are the questions that I gleaned that were maybe still rattling around in some of the council members' heads. One is the new addition of the section regarding decision-making capacities. And again, this doesn't take anything away from the Planning Commission. We just use that language and basically reproduced it in this ordinance. So there are decisions that are quasi-judicial that the Historic Preservation Commission makes. That would be approval of a certificate of appropriateness, which is any change to a landmark that goes through Historic Preservation Commission. It could be appeal of a staff decision regarding something along the same lines. It could be approving economic incentives for a potential landmark or district. So because of that, there are special rules as far as ex parte communication, that sort of thing, that we wanted to put in the ordinance. So it's almost verbatim. If I thought, well, maybe we missed it and we left Planning Commission in there, but I think we've got it covered. So that was one of the questions I heard. The other is a question about the moratorium applying to, we have a new section that puts some standards in place as far as maintaining your historic landmark. And the moratorium only applies to somebody who goes and makes a change to their landmark without any approval for a certificate of appropriateness. So in that case, it is at our option to put a 1-year moratorium on future permits for that property, if somebody goes ahead and does that. And then we up that to 2 years if somebody just demolishes their landmark without going through any process, or they decide to pick it up and move it somewhere else. It doesn't apply to the maintenance issues. So if we do identify a maintenance issue and we say, hey, you need to get a roof permit, this would not apply to that. They definitely would. And then there were a number of questions about the criteria and the process for enforcing that maintenance requirement. So I got a real quick presentation. Number one, I think you all caught that, but this is only for our existing landmarks. Ultimately, we may have some districts which it would apply to, but not today. So it's all these red dots. We have about 140 landmarks of our in our community, and about 40,000 housing units. So it's a small percentage, but they do deserve a little bit further look. And I want to talk about one example, because I think this is where this need grew from, was 519 Atwood Street. And on the left is a picture of a nice little home there in September of 2012. I think a lot of the staff described it to me as like a log cabin. It was a pretty rough structure. Looks pretty good in this picture, but since 2012, the owners basically took out windows and basically just allowed the weather to come into that building to a point in 2017 there was really nothing we could do to save it. This was not a landmark, so in this case, this ordinance wouldn't apply to it. But it does kind of set an example of, boy, we allowed somebody to get to a point where there was no other action than demolishing the place. And they built a nice duplex, so maybe it worked out in the end. But that's kind of the common example that I've heard. That is why we're doing this. So criteria. It's kind of vague, but I'll just read it real quickly, is this paragraph B from 2.56.220. No person, lessee, or occupant of any historically designated property shall deliberately cause or negligently fail to prevent significant deterioration of the exterior or any special feature of a landmark, and that could be like a cupola on the roof. So this, I think, what would happen in this case, we did open it up to civil penalties, so it would be our code enforcement folks that would probably get a complaint, and that could be from staff. It could be from the Historic Preservation Commission members that know these structures. It could be somebody in the neighborhood that could say, hey, nobody's living in this place, the window's out, and it's going to heck. So we would go out, we'd take a look at it. First, we'd meet with staff, and we'd go out and take a look at it and say, does this look like a significant opportunity for deterioration of this historic landmark? If we agree it does, we would send a notice of violation to the owner, and then we would set a time, depending on how big of a fix it is. If they need to replace the roof, it could be a 30-day period of time that we would give them to make it correct. Our goal is to get it in compliance through this process, not necessarily enforce the code and get fees. As far as other criteria, we do have the International Property Maintenance Code that we use for serious cases of unsafe structures. But staff would use some of the descriptions of what exterior deterioration looks like that they would use as kind of a guide to help make a decision on this. So if the applicant goes and they fix the problem, and again, it would be something more than likely we could see from the exterior, be a hole in a wall, a window, something like that, not peeling paint. It would have to be something much more significant than that. If they fix it, great. If they don't, we will send another notice and say, okay, we gave you 30 days, you now have 2 weeks to make this right, or we're going to file, or we're going to hit you with a civil penalty. If they fix it, great. If they don't, then we would start the process of a civil penalty. And we go in increments. It starts at 100. If they continue to not fix anything, it goes up to 200, and then up to 500, and then that $500 could be repeated every time they don't, they fail to basically fix the problem. And then those become liens. If they don't pay them, they become liens on the property. So that's roughly what this process would add The intent is we don't want it to become an unsafe structure that we have to board up or demolish. It's just an additional tool that we're going to use for landmarks to make sure they stay intact. That's all I have. If there are other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do councilors have other questions? Councilor Christ?
Thanks, Glenn.
Sure.
So, Historic Preservation Commission, if it's a designated structure, they already require a certificate of appropriateness, say before you take out the windows. Isn't that true?
Right.
So what happened with the house on Atwood? I mean, how did that sort of slip through the cracks?
Yeah, I wasn't here. I'm not really sure what all the details were. It could have been just a broken window. It wouldn't be necessarily they actually made an effort to take it out. But you would also need a building permit for that. So, yes, there were a number of things that they avoided. I don't know if they meant to avoid it, but there were a number of things that we didn't catch, right?
So I'm just wondering about the mechanism of this. I mean, I'm thinking that maintenance is somewhat required anyway on a designated structure. I mean, go through the Historic Preservation Commission. So I'm just wondering about the structure of how are you going to catch this? And my main thrust is how do we build something that's not a burden on staff, that fits within the structure that you already have administratively, so that it works. You know, I feel like now we're all, looking around at all the buildings to see, make sure that they're being cared for. Yeah, and then afterwards, with this house on Atwood, if they had let it deteriorate, and then by then they had to ask for a demolition permit, you're suggesting right then that they are not given a permit for a year or 2 years?
In this case, in the provision of what we're proposing to you, if the building official says, hey, it's unsafe, it's not savable, it gets demolished. It doesn't go through any process. So there's that shortcut. So what we're trying to do is insert some discussion, some communication before it gets to that point. I don't think it's going to be an additional burden. Again, right now, today, it's 140 structures. And believe me, there's a lot of people that are focused on these buildings. The owners know. When it becomes landmark, we do it by ordinance, and that gets recorded against the property, and we put a nice big brass plaque on the front, very close to the front entrance. So it's not a secret by any means, but I really don't think it's going to be an additional burden to staff.
In my experience, it's easier to be proactive and preventative rather than punitive after the fact. And so I'm just going that direction of how do we build something that actually works. And first off, you probably know, or you heard me say, I'm in favor of let's review demolitions before they occur. So suppose you review a demolition and you say this seems like it was an intentional degradation of the property. What happens then? You're saying if the building inspector says, well, it can't be saved, then they just go ahead. So what influences people to actually maintain the property?
Well, one of the things that we talked about among staff is there is a requirement that says it has to degrade either from when it was landmarked or when this ordinance went into place. So one thing we've done is prior to any landmark, we photographically document the building. So we know what it is at that point. So we have a good guide, I guess, is if it has significantly deteriorated. And then we'll probably need to keep doing that. Now, these are new requirements, so we intend to notify all those 140 owners. There's some new rules in place. We're here to help you, and then continue that every year, just to notify people that you do have a special place, a historic landmark in Longmont, and there's special rules that apply. So I think that would be kind of feature proactive, because I totally agree with you. It's much easier to catch them first and before it's too late.
So I think part of it is notify them, here's a change in the rules, here's what we need to do. I think to Glenn's point, it is not uncommon for people to understand these properties, frankly, any property, and let us know about something occurring on it. And it doesn't even have to be a historic property. One of the things that constantly challenges us is people that just do work on their homes without pulling a permit. And I can't tell you the number of times that we've received communications from neighbors saying this work's going on, I don't see a permit, and so then we follow up with it. And I just think that's generally an issue that we deal with. I know that I've personally been involved in situations where somebody may get a permit to add a patio, but then all of a sudden the patio turns into a closed room. And we've had to take the appropriate actions necessary to remedy that situation. So I think it's letting them know ahead of time. We know that the historic preservation community also watches this. They're communicating with us. Neighborhoods are communicating with us. But I can say generally, it's just a challenge across the board on getting this information. But we do get a lot of input from our community on these types of issues.
I agree. When you talk about sort of as a consequence for not having a COA, to say, well, it's going to be a year or 2 years before you can get a permit, it seems like in that scenario, they don't care whether they have a permit or not. So I don't know if that's going to dissuade them in any way from what they want to do next. And also, if there's a certain type of person that might say, well, we'll just get all the work done at once, and then there you go. We don't need one for 2 years. But meanwhile, your staff is, keeping those records, and it's, something they have to keep checking. So,
The Historic Preservation Commission had a similar concern in that maybe it's not to the city's best interest to hold permits. And in that case, they could go plead their case and say, hey, we have an excellent residential unit that will fit in. We'd like to come in and get approval of that. The Historic Preservation Commission has the discretion in the ordinance to say, okay, we'll reduce that time, or we'll take it off the table. So they do have that ability to waive the moratorium.
okay. But I want people to not see a permitting process as being punitive. I want them to see that as being a happy experience, if I could say it any other way.
Yeah,
And something that they would, just as good citizens go, sign up to do.
right.
But as it seems like people feel hesitant to approach a permitting process, especially with a designated structure.
Right.
Yeah.
Those, excuse me, those that are savvy, they get their permit because they know when they want to sell, people will have to see that permit and see a C of O. So it's maybe more your homeowner that decides, hey, today I'm going to rip off the back patio cover and do something else. Those are the ones that I think we just need to educate and hopefully avoid those problems.
So is the Historic Preservation Commission, are they pretty, what should I say, interactive with the 140 designated properties that they have? Is there some training or?
Good question. I know they want to be. That is in their role, is basically provide education on the historic preservation process that we have. So I know we are trying to find a date for a retreat, and I know that's going to be on that to-do list, right?
Okay.
To be a little bit more out in the community. And
Well, from the beginning, I said, I believe in the reviewing the permits for demolition. But what you're saying is it's a little too late. But what I haven't heard is how do we make it not too late? How are we proactive? And I know that's a tough question because I don't think I have an answer for it. And I think it's the tougher thing to do than to say after it's happened, this is going to be the result or the consequence.
Let's see if Aaron has his light on. Let's see if he.
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. So just to address a couple things. First of all, again, with the Atwood Street property, you said that was not a designated property. So there is therefore no procedure to capture that necessarily.
Right.
Correct. Okay. So it wasn't that staff missed it. It's that there's no procedure to capture it because it's not designated. Okay. And moving on. As far as the demolition process was concerned, having been the liaison for the last 6 years, I was specifically would be asked as the liaison to sign off on a demolition. In 6 years, I never was, not once. Okay, so it's not common that through demolition they actually go through the procedure that was in the code prior to what's being proposed now. Okay, and as liaison for Historic Preservation Commission, I will tell you that there was a lot of conversation, both sides, and that,
That's not for you.
yeah, I know. And that, believe you me, because of our requirement to appoint certain qualifications to our Historic Preservation Commission as required by the state to be designated as a local government that is to have the designation of a qualified local government, we have to have certain qualifications of our board and commission members. In this case, we have architects. We have somebody who I believe is the state archaeologist on our Historic Preservation Commission. So they are more than qualified, if not more qualified than I was as the liaison. So I have no doubt in my mind that they are more than qualified to make that kind of recommendation and sign off on that application. The procedure in and of itself, I think, is completely justified in the sense that we had no punitive concept or very limited punitive concept for somebody that demolishes by negligence, much less demolishes outside of application. Whereas now, through much consideration of a very qualified Historic Preservation Commission, has some punitive effects or enforcement around that concept. And so, to me, it's completely considerate. There's nothing that is out of bounds with what they spent probably close to a year on. And so, at this point, I have no reason to see any way not to support the findings of a board that we appoint, a commission we appoint, who is more than qualified than probably every one of us sitting at this lectern. So, I appreciate my colleagues asking questions and being concerned, but I don't think that in any concept that we should deny the requested changes to the code.
I do, before I call on you again. I do have one question. You mentioned that they get 30 days to comply, and if they don't, then they get 2 more weeks. So Glenn, within that 30 days, even though they don't fix whatever the problem is, but they have contacted a contractor, or does that go for them? I mean, is that
Sure.
part? And they say, my contractor can't get to this until XYZ or whatever. So
Sure, Mayor.
that would work.
Yeah, that's the advantage of this process is a lot of it's to the discretion of the code enforcement officer. If they're moving ahead, and it is a busy time out there, and particularly historic
Yeah.
preservation contractor, there are fewer of them, but they're moving ahead. And those periods of time aren't set in stone. That's up to the discretion of the officer that's reviewing it.
Okay, great. Diane? And you have 3 minutes this time.
So 2.56.180 is trying to include the house on Atwood, just as an example, because the HPC wants to review any demolition for structures that are at least 50 years old, whether it's designated or not, correct? So that they can catch anything that could potentially be historic.
Not necessarily HPC. Maybe if it's too far gone and it's a hazard, the building official can go ahead and approve the demolition.
Okay. By a staff liaison and one council member. If it
Then-
should be delayed 10 days to determine if the permit should be granted.
Right, that
So-
would be, if it is savable, that's the first step. Right now, it's between the council liaison and the staff liaison. They look at it and say, is it a contributing potentially to a district? Does it meet potentially the criteria to be a landmark? If they say no, then the permit's approved. If they say yes, then it goes to Historic Preservation Commission.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time and for answering all our questions.
Sure.
Mine particularly. And I guess I'm ready for a vote. Oh, we need to make a motion. Public
Need a
input.
public hearing.
Yes, okay.
So now I would like to open up this 2023-05 to the public for a public hearing. I see that we do have one person that has signed up for this, and it is Steve Lane.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Steve Lane, 1013 Neon Forest Circle. I'm also the chair of the HPC. So I just wanted to come up here and thank you for taking the time to review all this. This does represent actually quite a bit of work. The HPC picked this up originally back prior to the pandemic. So this has been a multi-year process that's involved probably the work of 4 or 5 or 6 staff members over the course of time, multiple HPC commissioners that aren't even on the commission anymore, multiple city attorneys. There's a lot of work that's been put into this and a lot of hard conversations about striking the right balance between protecting our heritage structures and still respecting property values. And I think we did the best that we possibly could, and staff certainly supported us along the way. So again, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time and appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Steve. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to comment on ordinance 2023-05? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. And let's vote. Whoops. Yeah,
I move, agenda,
HPC
tw- yeah,
2023.
2023-05. 2024-05.
Oh,
Second.
it's been moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Rodriguez. Let's vote now. And that passes unanimously. Thank you for the discussion, everyone. We are now at 2024-06. This is a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 15.02, Section 15.02.060.1 of the Longmont Municipal Code on review of variance requests. Do we have a presentation on this one? Seeing none, are there any questions from council on this ordinance? Seeing none, I'll now open it up to the public hearing for ordinance 2024-06. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address this? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing on 2024-06. Let's have a motion.
I'll move ordinance 2024-06.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Hidalgo Faring and seconded by Councilor Rodriguez. Let's vote. That passes unanimously. Thank you. The next one is a bill for an administrative ordinance approving the purchase and sale and development agreement conveying 200 Bountiful Avenue and 905 Harvest Moon Drive to Vertical LLC for an affordable, attainable housing development. And this bill number is 2024-07. Do we have any questions from council on this bill? Yes. Councilor Rodriguez.
Just one question. Is Vertical LLC's operating agreement primarily the partnership private?
Councilor Rodriguez, Molly O'Donnell, Housing Director. So the entity that Vertical would create that would be the eventual owner of this development, yes, would be a private entity. Does that
Okay.
answer the question?
So what specifically, I guess I'm trying to,
Well, because technically speaking, if incorporated as a not-for-profit 501(c), it would be eligible for property tax exemption. So that's what my question was.
oh, okay, yeah, there won't be eligibility for a property tax exemption in this.
Correct. Not as proposed.
Thank you. I see no other questions from councilors, so I'll now open the public hearing on 2024, excuse me, 07. Is there anyone in public that would like to address this bill? Seeing no one, I will now close the public hearing on 2023-07. Can I have a motion? It's been moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor McCoy. All those, let's vote. And that carries unanimously.
Mayor, Council, can I say a few words?
Of course.
I wanted to thank you for your approval of this project and thank you all as a council body for your leadership on the affordable housing conversation. What a lot of folks may not realize is this is probably one of the most significant projects regarding affordable and attainable housing that you'll see in the state, with 185 homes being built that are completely under 120% AMI, and about 30, what is it, 30 or 40%? 40, just under 40% of the homes, or 55 units, will be permanently deed restricted for sale affordable housing units. I think when we look around and see what people are doing in this world, are doing in the state, this is potentially going to be one of the most significant projects that we've seen in the last few years. I think that's a result of your focus and attention on affordable and attainable housing and what we need in the community. And so I just want to thank you for your leadership in supporting us as we move through these projects.
Thank you, but I also want to support you and, I mean, all the work that you and Molly and the whole team have done on the affordable housing. Without your diving into and learning how to do this, we wouldn't have it. And I know you've spent hours and hours and hours on it. So thank you too. It's a great project. So we have nothing, no ordinances were pulled from the first reading. Nothing was removed from the consent agenda, so we're going to move on to general business. We have a presentation from Visit Longmont. I am not having a good time talking tonight. Visit Longmont Board Appointments, and I invite Sarah Leonard to the podium.
It's on, but.
Can you hear me now? Oh, yeah, that does sound different. Yeah. Thank you for hearing our presentation. Visit Longmont, as you know, is a separate 501c6 nonprofit organization We were incorporated in April of 2008. We are governed by a 9 to 13 member board of directors, and currently we have 2.5 staff and a digital content manager on contract. And today I'm here to talk to you about some bylaw amendments and changes to our board of director recruitment. Visit Longmont last year was tasked with updating policies and bylaw amendments to bring them more up to, just to update them to be timely. And so we reviewed and updated our bylaws at our fall retreat in September last year. They were approved by our board of directors. And what I'm here to present to you today are specifically around board of director recruitment. And those are sections listed in our bylaws related to the board of directors. So the amendments to share with you today are updated in board development while keeping the intent of our articles of incorporation and our strong partnership with the city council in providing destination marketing services for the Longmont community. We've updated language around a board recruitment focus to be our responsibility and take a little bit of time off of the city staff. We've refined board seat descriptions, including around sectors that support the tourism economy in the community of Longmont. So around accommodation, short-term rentals, hospitality and tourism businesses, and economic development. And while retaining our city council member seat as a voting member, City Council Member Christ. And so specifically, the new Visit Longmont board seats that the board approved, and these were refined descriptions around board seats that could continue to help strengthen our board of directors by providing the skills and experiences around the tourism economy and helping us achieve our mission. And those 3 seats that were newly defined were around the arts and culture sector, sustainability or sustainable development sector, and an outdoor recreation sector seat. And at our last board meeting, the Visit Longmont Board of Directors approved this slate of new board directors before you and on the screen. For the Arts and Culture seat, Eric Mason, the recently appointed director of the Longmont Museum. The Sustainability Board seat, Byron Kalmanek, the founder of Jack Solar Garden, a farm in the Longmont area. And the Outdoor Recreation Board seat, Jeff Friesner, the Director of Recreation and Culture with the City of Longmont. So what we're asking you today is to ratify that approval of that slate, and this would add those board of directors, which is a little bit hard to see, but to our current board, where I've listed out the executive committee and our current board directors for 2024. Thank you. We're seeking, Joni's helping me out here. So with this board of approval, what I'm asking here today is for the city council to ratify that approval and that slate of candidates.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you very much, Mayor Peck. It did not say in our council communication, where in the code is it required that we ratify other seats outside of our internally appointed representative?
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney, I believe it's in their bylaws.
It's in their bylaws. And so we're required to ratify their bylaws?
And I think the Articles of Incorporation, if you know them better.
That's my understanding. The intent in the Articles of Incorporation were to have the city council approve or ratify 1/3 of the board of directors of Visit Longmont. And so what we did in our bylaw amendments was just update the process of board recruitment, but to continue to have that 1/3, this board slate approval or ratification by the city council.
Okay, it's the first I think I've ever seen of this. As far as outside of our council representative asking the city council to ratify a slate of board of directors for the Visit Longmont. So I didn't know that was necessarily within our purview. I mean, I have no problem with the recommendations whatsoever. I think they're all extremely qualified. I was just curious where in code that it says that we have to do that, or it's in their bylaws though, not within our or in our code or charter. Okay, well, with that, I move to accept the slate as presented by Visit Longmont.
Oh, dear. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Councilor Rodriguez moved to approve the bylaws, the slate of board members for Visit Longmont, and that was seconded by whoever Dawn would like to put down. She did, yes. Oh, Councilor Yarbrough. So, yeah, let's vote. There we go. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Sarah. So we are now going to have a staff presentation by Stephanie Cooper on the resolution of the Longmont City Council naming the neighborhood park located at 636 Deerwood Drive as the Fox Meadows Park. And this is Resolution 2024-09.
Good evening, Mayor Peck.
Oh, there you are.
Council members. I'm actually going to introduce myself. I haven't met everyone on the council. Stephanie Cooper, Manager, Parks and Trails Development. But we will be presenting on the resolution for the naming of one of our 8 and 5 parks, a new neighborhood park. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Steve Ransweiler to present, the Senior Project Manager managing the project.
Mayor, Council, Steve Ransweiler, Senior Project Manager for Natural Resources. I'm pleased we have a presentation. Oh, is it? I actually work it. This has been a long time since I've. There we go. Sorry, glasses issue here. Slideshow. There we go. Fox Meadows Neighborhood Park. The land was dedicated to us back in 2002 or 3 with the development of the Fox Meadows neighborhood. We engaged in a public process last fall and had some public meetings at Trail Ridge Middle School. And had 3 public meetings at the Trail Ridge Middle School, got some ideas from the public as far as what they'd like to see there, looked at that based upon what budget we have allotted for this park, and made some decisions on that. Brought that plan to Parks and Recreation Advisory Board in November, and they recommended it to you for approval. This is the plan we're planning to move forward with, which you can see as typical with our neighborhood parks. We try to have an open turf area, shelters, a unisex restroom, playground. Those are sort of the staples of our neighborhood park system. This particular park, we're incorporating a half-court basketball and a handball court, and possibly an off-leash dog exercise area. We've also acknowledged that there is a larger senior population in this this neighborhood. You'd be surprised, the first public meeting, I swear the mean age was 65, 70. It was pretty startling. But they all insisted there's no kids. I'm like, they're there. They'll come play, I promise you. They want a no playground. So we met in the middle. There's bocce. There's going to be 4 or 5 tables that could have some chess patterns and things like that. There's a walking loop, several walking loops incorporated, and a shelter for some shade. So we're trying to gear this towards all populations. We have actually engaged Wank Associates for the design of this project and ECI Site Construction out of Loveland for construction. We're under a design build contract with them for this project. And per your direction, we will engage with getting this designed. And the current schedule shows us having this completed in first quarter of 2025. So we're still shooting for that.
Fantastic.
Thank you. And then the next is the park naming. is the official business, because this does need to be approved by resolution. We did go through, this is ordinance 132030, and what has to go into a park name. So this is the criteria that we do give to the public. We solicited input from the public at the public meetings as well as through online blasts and received, what would you say, Stephanie, 60, 70 or so? I believe they're in your packet, the list of some were not deemed appropriate, some were. And the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board recommended that we move forward with Fox Meadows as the park name. And with that, I'll leave it to you for questions.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Steve, I'm not sure that I remember how the approval process for the actual content of a park happened anymore. It's been a while while we were going through the 8 and 5. I've attended meetings, neighborhood meetings, where park proposals were discussed. And you mentioned that the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board approved the proposal for the park. The council does not actually propose the content, ever have to approve the content of a park or the design of a park. Is that correct?
Mayor Peck, Councilmember Martin, we used to, I've been here for quite a while, and many councils, it used to be that councils would adopt a master plan for our parks. That has proven to be a little bit more challenging as time goes on, and we have to have flexibility in those master plans. So what the current approach is to have them just approved by council, just saying, yes, this is okay to move forward with this. This is after a robust public process, as well as PRAB doesn't approve anything. They make recommendations to council for approval. And so Parks Board did make a recommendation to you. As far as the contents of the park, it's a balance. It's not only what the people that show up at the meetings want. That's not how it works. This park is for the entire community, not just the people that have the time and the means to come to the meetings we host. So we do listen to that. We do take direction from that. But we also talk with our recreation staff to see what their needs and trends that are, so they can program this park for public use. And as well as we have certain staples, like we do want to make sure there's an open turf area for people to come and be able to recreate. There's a lot of people, as the city is becoming more dense, where we're needing to include places for people to recreate that don't have yards. And that's just going to be a fact. As far as park system is going to probably be used more intensively over the next coming decades. And so we want to make sure that we're making them fun and resilient and safe and maintainable and all those things we strive for every park we build. Did that answer your question?
No. Because I didn't catch whether you said that the final design of the park was ever approved by council or whether you said before there used to be a parks master plan and now there isn't. So there are some questions that I have that come from some sustainability concerns that I don't think that we know about. For example, I hear a lot about how many drinking fountains, water sources there are in parks. We hear a lot about homelessness and the safety of restrooms. And so you mentioned that there's a restroom. You didn't mention any water sources other than the restroom itself. And so I don't think the council has ever weighed in on those aspects. I'd be happy to see those as standard properties of all of the 8 and 5 parks. But I'd like to know they were there, and I don't think we do.
Mayor Peck, Councilmember Martin, we do include at least the modern parks. I can't speak for some of the parks that were built back in the 50s and 60s.
Sure, I understand
The
there's a
modern
cycle.
parks, since I've been here since '98, every park has had a drinking fountain. It does not have year-round water. We do not have year-round water in our neighborhood parks because of the concern of frozen pipes and the limitations of operations. So they are seasonal. They close in October and open in April.
Yeah, presumably it's a heat thing.
But there are drinking fountains. We have changed our drinking fountain approach in the past 4 or 5 years and use jug fillers because a lot of people bring their own water sources or water storage vessels now. But those, and then our restrooms are high efficiency. We do meet the criteria that is set by the city for utilizing sustainable practices in our park design as much as possible. If the council did want to hear some sort of presentation about how we approach park design from a sustainability lens, I could certainly speak with Stephanie and Francie and Joni and come up with something.
Well, that'd be great, and if you'd like that introduced, for a future agenda, we can certainly accommodate that, in a future meeting, but I think it is important.
And I think on the restroom construction, in terms of what we've talked about in terms of vandalism, I know I'm funding a number of positions to go to the National SEPTED conference so that they can start looking at different components and what other communities are doing so that we can deal with those issues in terms of the design. I sent a group last year, and then we're going to send another group in a month or so.
Oh, yeah, and all that's great. I just think that we should have it as if we should move it up to official policy. Thank you. That's all I've got.
Councillor Hidalgo-Fearing.
Thank you, Mayor. So when you were referring to the participation, the community engagement process, so there were a lot of people in the neighborhood, I assume, that weren't able to attend the meetings. How much feedback did you get from residents offline, or who weren't in attendance? Like, do you feel like there was a balance of people who were present at these engagement meetings, as well as opportunities for other people to weigh in their priorities?
Mayor Peck, Councilmember Hidalgo-Fearing, no. And that is a gap, and
Okay.
I'll admit that that's a gap. We have our public meetings, we advertise them as best we can, we encourage people to come. We have tried a multitude of things over the years and have not come up with that sweet spot of engaging everybody in our community.
Yeah.
We're
No, I hear
constantly
ya. I know.
looking at ways to do that. And with Marika's communication team, hopefully we can look at more ways. Technology is always changing, but people don't necessarily have access to technology either.
yeah.
And so we have limited staff ability to go into neighborhoods and go door to door and things like that. That
Sure.
costs a lot of time and money that would take away from construction of
Yeah.
parks, really. And so it's finding that balance. But I still feel that we do a pretty robust process. We do solicit feedback online.
Okay.
And we had 40 to so people at these public meetings, and that's not bad for
Yeah.
a park in a fall night for an hour and a half. So
Do you feel like the makeup of the participants was balanced, or do you feel like there was one group that kind of dominated, whether it be age group, ethnicity,
yeah,
socioeconomic?
every public meeting process for every park is different based on the neighborhood. This one was not representative of families or people with young children, things like that, even though there is multifamily housing at the southeast corner or southwest corner of 9th and County Line, which I know that those people will be using this park.
Yeah.
And so I spoke for them.
Thank you, yeah.
That's what I was trying to explain to Councilmember
Yeah.
Martin, is that staff comes in and knows we need things just because the people say, well, we don't want a restroom. That brings bad people in. Well,
Yeah.
we need a restroom.
Yeah.
So-
No, and I agree with you there, and I appreciate that, looking at the whole scope of Longmont and who would be using that. So, I appreciate that. The other thing that I appreciate, and I've been hearing from residents about our dog parks. I know we have, in Ward 3, we're hearing, possibly having a dog park at Lake McIntosh. But we also have one that it's not too far away. So I think just having a variety of different types. I think do we only have two? The one by Airport and the one off of 21st.
Correct.
near Carr
Mayor
Park.
Peck and Councilmember Hidalgo-Fearing, yes, we have 2 official dog parks.
Yeah.
There are 4 unleashed, believe it or not,
Mm-hmm.
when people are doing a park, when they live next door to the park, they don't like to live next to a dog park.
Mm-hmm.
They have no problem living next to an off-leash dog exercise area, which is what we call our areas in neighborhood parks that are small
Yeah.
enclosed areas for dogs to
Yeah,
run around,
yeah.
but it's not a dog park.
It's not a dog park.
Don't tell.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but anyway, there's 4 others of those. There's one demonstrated on this plan, and that's
Yes.
something that I did want to mention, is that we are fighting rising costs like everybody else. That's a prime thing to cut out of this. It's very challenging being in a detention pond, and because of the grading, and so I would expect that that's not going to end up in the park. It could be a future phase maybe, but
Okay.
and it was not requested by the public. That was requested by staff. And that's
Okay.
something we're probably
I
gonna have
think
to
it
walk
would
away
be
from here.
popular, just based on feedback I get. I mean, it's a different area of town, but
I
If-
can
yeah.
tell you, though, we are working to recycle the shelter that's being removed from the museum, in the museum
Okay.
project right now.
Yeah.
And reinstall that at dog park number 1, which
Okay.
is the one at 21st and Francis,
Yeah, yes.
later this year. We're going to try to recycle that shelter and repurpose it out there.
I'd love
And
to
get
have
some-
conversation with
Get
you
some
at a
running
later
water.
date.
Feel free to
But
contact me, that's fine.
I will. No, that's great. Thank you very much.
I wanted to jump in really quick in terms of community involvement and community engagement. I think council, we've talked about, we are in the process via Nextlight and the utilities, bringing Salesforce into our organization. And that's really going to allow us to connect with our community at a different level in terms of reaching out to community members and asking, what are you interested in, what location of the community, so that we're actually going to, once we can fully engage in this, actually do more direct communication with people and allow those who are interested to participate in different ways. So we're really excited about it. We're still in the front end of Salesforce, but we know that there's a lot of opportunities for us in increasing communication and actually having wider outreach with our broader community.
Who's 6? No, I'm looking at the wrong one. Counselor McCoy. Christ.
First, let me commend you for doing such great engagement with the neighborhood. You actually got 6 pages of suggestions for names. I think that's phenomenal. And being kind of new at this, I started looking at parks, and I realized, how are parks named? And a lot of our parks are actually named by physical location or function. Almost half of them, actually. We have 53 parks, unless there's more that I don't know about. And I noticed that about 13 of those were named after men, some of them pioneers and founders. But we only had one that was named after a woman just on her own merits. She was not a Longmont resident. So I noticed in your list there were suggestions of females that on their own merits meet the criteria to have a park named after them. One of them is our first female mayor, who, by the way, doesn't know I'm talking to you about this, and I don't know that she knows her name ever came up on this list. But we've only had 3 female mayors, and the third one is sitting next to me. Leona Stacker's name is on this list. She brought Nextlight to Longmont. She did an 8-year term. She was the only female on the council at that time. She has been a constant proponent of fundraisers, charities, all things Longmont that support Longmont. And so I just want for consideration, if we've got 8 parks coming in the next 5 years, that we do some parity in terms of women that have been significant in our community. And I also saw Patricia Jones' name on the list, and she was a fabulous teacher. And Pat Lopez. We're building a park for Nino Gaslo and a Latino. And it would be nice to do something for Pat Lopez as well, just for parity. We do have one, actually, McIntosh Lake, I believe, is named after Chief McIntosh, who was a member of the Creek tribe. And so it would also be nice to find maybe a female tribal member to name a park after. And I just, I wanted to throw that out for the consideration of the council and for the Parks and Recreation Department.
Thank you. We have 2 motions here. The first one is to let's do the first one for the resolution of naming the neighborhood park. Well, actually, that is not a resolution, that's an ordinance. It is?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so can I have a motion? Thank you. Councilor McCoy moved the naming of Deerwood, of the neighborhood park at 636 Deerwood Drive, and that was seconded by Councilor Hidalgo Faring. Is there any discussion anymore? No? Seeing none, let's vote. So that passed 6-1 with Councilor Christ in opposition.
Thank you.
Our legislative bills and assistant city attorneys. Not city attorney, I keep doing that. City manager Sandy Cedar will present.
Thank you, Mayor. Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager. Welcome to the legislative session. They have started with a bang, 185 bills already this morning when I last looked, so they're off and running for sure. We've probably sent 100 for municipal comment. I went to my first CML municipal caucus meeting today. I do just want to review kind of what happens during the legislative session. It's my job to read each of those bills and determine if there's some level of municipal impact. If I think there is, I'll check it with the staff members that are most closely tied to that, as well as their partner attorney. They send comments back to me. I'm also listening to what's happening at CML and as well as other professional organizations. If I determine from the staff comments and from the other things that I hear that this has a significant impact on Longmont, either positive or negative, those are the ones that I bring to you for an official position. At any time, you're welcome to ask for a bill to be brought for a position as well. You'll see that today based on Mayor Peck's request during the pre-session to bring one for you to consider. And then, of course, as we continue down this road, once you decide an official position, then I lobby our local legislators with your position and try to help them understand where Longmont stands on each of these bills really quickly as we're rolling. So you'll see this item on the agenda pretty much from now until May. You'll receive these bills on Friday so that we are as quick as we possibly can be on these. And if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to ask. One thing that's important to know about legislation is that when the council takes a position on the bill, they take it as a body. And so sometimes you may be asked at some point to come down and testify on something. You're welcome to anytime. Just identify that you're a single council member and not speaking for the council unless the position has been taken. You can also find all these things on our city website under Legislative Affairs anytime you want. So with that, we have 4 bills for your consideration today. The first one is House Bill 24-1012. This is the operational efficiency of the Front Range Passenger Rail District. So as a relatively new district, they're kind of getting their feet underneath them and wanted to pass some additional legislation to help with efficiency and contracting. This is obviously transportation oriented. That's a main piece of the council work plan and important to make sure that it continues to be successful. So the staff recommends that City Council support House Bill 24-1012.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you. I didn't know we were going to necessarily take these one at a time.
It's up to you.
My comment was going to be specifically about the one where staff doesn't have a recommendation, which is the study of the universal health care, I believe. And so that I'm just going to go ahead here and say that I move that I don't know if I can move that, I suppose that council supports the study of universal health care, as it's just a study, and it'd be nice to have that data and numbers, and as well as at the expenditure of the state.
I'll second.
So thank you for that, Councilor Rodriguez. Actually, we supported the same bill last year. And so this is nothing, for the public, this is nothing more than a study to look at other states to see how they've done it, did it work, et cetera. So are there any other comments on this bill? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor. I will point out that we've had some challenges recently with family, the Family Medical Leave Act that you took a look at last year and opted out of certain portions. So we'll be bringing back more information as we have some. That's not exactly related, but somewhat, so I wanted to point it out.
Okay, Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. So now with the direction given on that specific bill, I move that council supports the staff recommendations on all four, including the now specified bill.
So it's been moved again by Councilor Rodriguez, seconded by Councilor Martin, that I'm going to ask you to clarify the slate, is what you wanted to do? The other four, the other three?
Including, yes.
Okay. Is there any discussion from anyone else? I wanted to do a little clarification on the very first one, 1012 for Front Range. All this is basically doing is a cleanup bill for us, because some of the, for example, when we first started, we were trying to see if we had to codify all of the board members. And this straightens, cleans that up a little bit, that we don't need to go through that process. So thank you for that. Let's vote. You can't abstain. Okay. So that passes 6-1 with Councilor Christ in opposition, and she told me why, so would you tell the rest of council what?
I just haven't had a chance to see the verbiage on these. And it wasn't in my packet. So I just, I'm a reader. So I just want to read more fully on it. Generally agree with the terms that you've said here, and I trust you, Sandy, but I just like to know the details.
So Mayor Peck and Councilmember Christ, on the website, the Legislative Affairs website, is a spreadsheet, and there are links to every single bill that we're tracking. So that's a much longer list than these ones here. If you would like for me to begin to include the bill information, I'm happy to do that as well, if that's something that the council as a body would like for me to do. Or it's all listed in that website for your review.
Yeah, I just would like more details, but next time. Thanks.
I was gonna say the same thing. If you go to our council the link, if you click on the link and go to Legislative Affairs, and you can click to see the list of bills tracked, that actually takes you to the state site. And that's what I did prior to coming here, is I went through and I read through the background of all those bills directly from the state. So I just wanted to give you. Yeah, there you go.
And I'm happy to walk through that with you, Councilmember Christ, if you would like to sit down and take a look at it together.
I have to say that being on council the very first year is a learning curve. So it's a fire hose, so we all need to be patient, because we've all been there. So, and I'm glad that maybe we should mention that, because not everybody reads the packet for the public. They should be reading these bills as well, or voting on them. So, Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I would just want one other thing to say. These specific recommendations for a council meeting come out later than the packet because of the pace at which the legislature moves. So you always need to look like the day before in your email, and it'll be there because it falls too late for the packet. But I think this is really important because it's empowering for the council, because our testimony to the legislature is much stronger if the council has voted to support as a body. And so that's why we prepare to do it, even though it's a real fast-track process. And I have to say, because I seem to recall grousing about it when I was a new council member, because so often there was something I wanted supported, and we didn't get to it in fast enough. And Sandy has done a marvelous job of speeding up that process and getting us into a position where we can really wield our influence to the legislature. So I am so happy with this process, the way it goes now.
Thank you, Sandy. We're now at final call, public invited to be heard. Do you want to take a bio break? Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak? I see absolutely no one, so I will call, final call, public invited to be heard. I know. Mayor and council comments. Do we have any comments from council? Seeing none, we'll go to city manager remarks.
No comments, Mayor, Council.
Thank you, city attorney.
No comments, Mayor?
Great, can I have a motion to adjourn? It's been moved and seconded by everybody. Let's vote. That passes. We are adjourned.